You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherlands calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. So. Good evening, good morning, good night, dear Pan-Africans and the whole African family worldwide. She is here. The Queen is here. I don't want to believe it, but as you can see, for the first time that we're even 1 minute earlier on the Pan-African Daily TV, we can't even just wait. We can't wait. I don't know. I mean, that's why I said we would not have time, because time would never be enough for us to digest this gift from the Creator. And so every minute counts. So wherever you're watching, wherever you're connecting, today we want to talk about how you can become the new you. That was the caption that our ancestors, that the Creator gave to us. You know, we don't do mainstream thing and think. Dr. Elaine never said anything what we're going to talk about today. And Naisha never talked about any topic. Dr. Susan says that we never. The Creator just gives us what we should know. What is the message that is passing through these physical beings that are sitting here? And what is it that He wants you to know? What is it that you should be doing right now? I mean, like the chosen people, like created in His image, where the all origins of the human race and species and every other living thing on the on the planet Earth came from. So He wants us to be a vessel, to be that facilitator, to be the door, to be the voice, to be the hand, to be the head. So each and every one of us have our own duty and our ways and our works in life. So does the Queen, Mother, Daughter, Queen of Africa. Dr. Ferguson is also here on her own journey with her own baggage that the Creator gave to her. And you would see all of us are carrying these baggages. You haven't even known your own, but it's a work that you're carrying. And sometimes we wonder, we keep turning in these circles until you start releasing the right thing that you were brought to do. We're just going to be turning around thinking and dreaming and looking for other things. So I'm so happy, people. You see the way you know me, the days that is our thing, because the solution and the questions that you Africans have been wailing for years, ages, decades, centuries, asking questions and even looking for other, alternative solutions that have never been really actually that. For whatever reason, the Creator did it this way, but now is the time that He say, you know what, it is over. It is over. I have sent, exactly like the Christians who say, or the Bible would say, I have sent my own people, they are there. Your same people that are there. Me, I am there everywhere. So if you just listen to them, and if you just are conscious and get that message, you don't need to look for any skies. You don't need to look for any image to see me there. You don't need to go in a particular house called church or whatever, or mosque or whatever to see me there. You don't need me. I am there everywhere. And if you even need a message and my messengers, I will give them to you at the right time. And this is the time. I want to thank all of you joining from the continent, from the diaspora, everywhere that you're connecting on this special exclusive edition where we have waited for the Queen Daughter. And the Creator said, this is the day, this is the time, and we're happy to have her here. Dr. Elaine Ferguson, welcome, my Queen, for the first time on African Daily.
Oh, my sister, my queen, oh, my mother, it is such a pleasure, such an honor to be a part of the work that you're doing, the magnificent work that you're doing. Thank you for who you are and what you are, the beacon of light that you are for our people. Thank you so much.
Wow, that is the spirit. That's the energy that we feel here. I mean, when I saw, even the first time Nyesha said, Mom, we have to get her on the Pan African, and I saw only the platforms that you have been as guest, as host, and I was like, wow. So God will just first of all use his own to order people that don't even really need her. And then we are going to be that person. It is an honor, daughter of the soil, to have you and whatever you bring, we thank you so much. Whatever message that you have to give to us today, and particularly the most important message, we're connecting ourselves. We are coming back to our senses. We are
Yes, yes,
realizing that distance is not what unites us. We are
yes,
realizing that our enslaved, your descendants, and my own, the colonizers on the continent, it has always been an illusion that we are not one, that we are separated. No, this is the time,
yes,
and that is that message
yes.
that you're bringing. So, what is it that we would be doing in this 2 hour session with you?
Well, what we're going to do first, I want to also acknowledge my dear brother Philippe Matthews for making the connection with you and Yasha. What
Yes.
we're going to do is have a conversation with our family about the truth of who they are when we talk about health and well being and what's possible for them. That's what we're going to talk about.
Beautiful. Beautiful. We would actually, as I drop in, there were a lot of questions coming in. They want to know about you. They want to know what
Mhm.
you've been doing. And some actually like, is she truly African? She's so
Yeah,
beautiful. Is she having descendants from, there's just some question. I know, like, wait a minute, be on the show. And because it's like it's so impossible that we haven't heard, we haven't known you, and such this
yes,
precious gift, just like Rev Shock. Also, I'm giving that beautiful shout out to the
yes,
our king. He's our king, we
yes,
know. And for putting this medium of connecting the spirits
yes.
together. And
Mm.
the questions are just too much, so probably maybe we'll just start with answer anything. Who are you?
Bye bye. Well, I'll tell you first and foremost, I am a child of the divine. That's how I identify myself as a woman of African descent. I am a native of Detroit, Michigan, in the US. My parents were Southerners. They moved to the North in search of a better way of life. And my parents, from my birth, as well as my sisters, wanted us to fulfill our dreams, our educational dreams. They didn't have that opportunity because they grew up during the Great Depression. So they were very committed to giving us the resources we need. And to that end, I decided when I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a doctor. And my mother told me there wasn't anything I couldn't do. So I believed her. And I went to I went to college at Brown University, medical school at Duke University in the U.S., and I moved on and did my training at the University of Chicago. But the most important thing I want to share with you, my sister, is that during medical school, very early on, I had basically a spiritual awakening as to how magnificent the human body is. It is absolutely amazing in terms of how it functions, in terms of how it's designed to function. It's not anything I was taught in medical school because we're taught to focus on dis-ease and what's not working. But my soul showed me something else, and I wanted to know more. I wanted to know how the spirit interacted with the body. I wasn't going to learn that at Duke, and I saw miracles happen when I was a student in terms of my patients who had spontaneous disappearances of life endangering diseases, cancer, heart disease, premature babies survive. And I just knew there was more to practicing medicine than what I was learning about disease because my entire education was about disease. I didn't learn about health. I kept waiting for the health lecture. When is it going to happen? And it never did. I did not learn how to help my patients become healthy. And I continued to see miracles happen during my residency. And when I went into practice, I must also add that my dad was my health guru. My father was very healthy, and both of my parents were for that matter, but my father was very proactive long before the health food movements in the United States. He was eating healthy foods. My parents grew up as farmers. They raised their foods. And my dad told me about taking vitamins when I was in medical school, about high levels of vitamins. And it's like, I didn't believe him. No, but he was absolutely correct. And when I went into practice, I quickly realized I could not practice medicine in the way that I was trained for the rest of my career for 30, 40 years. I couldn't do it. I couldn't just practice in terms of recommending drugs and surgery. I wanted to do more for my patients. So I began to explore nutrition at first because I started taking supplements during my residency and I saw the difference that taking optimal supplements made for my health and my stamina. And long story short, I discovered a body of research that supports the use of uh, of vitamin supplementation in terms of treating and preventing diseases that's basically been ignored and or suppressed in the United States. And out of that, I began to explore other forms of healing, energy medicine, laying on of hands, ancient African healing techniques and practices going back to Kemet, West African techniques, in Ayurveda, Chinese medicine. All of those different approaches have their place and they are valid. And fortunately, during the 1980s and into the 90s, there's a great body of research that confirms the importance of engaging the whole person, the mind and the body, as well as the spirit, in terms of creating health. There's research about meditation and how positive it impacts the health. There's research about how our spirituality plays a role in our health and well-being, and all sorts of dynamic interactions. So that's the long and the short of how I got to where I currently am. And I began to practice holistic medicine back in the 80s, and I've written books and I've had programs. I've done a lot of things in the course of my career. Most recently, I'm focusing on helping our people around the world heal the wounds of racism. That's my work right now because it's such a major stressor. And when I speak of racism, not only the racism that occurs in these United States and in the diaspora and in the UK and in Germany and Europe, South Africa, but the colonialization, the impact that that has had on our people. It's the same thing, it's just a different term. So that's the work that I do right now. And it's so wonderful to be able to speak to audiences, to my family around the world, to share this opportunity. We don't have to be sick. We were designed and created to be optimally healthy. That's how our creator made us. And when we give the body, when we give our minds and we give our spirits the optimal nutrients that they need to function harmoniously, we have the capacity to create optimal health and well-being regardless of what's happened to us. Because that's the truth of who we are. We have the blueprint, if you will, of health and well-being that's resting inside of us for the opportunity to express itself.
Wow. Um, it is, I don't know, Black people, Africans worldwide, we have diseases that are physical and we have mental diseases.
Yeah,
We have natural diseases like any other race on the earth, but we have
yes.
the biggest disease that is incurable that are not prescribed to other races but the African. How would you describe that?
Well, I would describe that in the context of what's happened to our continent and to us during, as well as around the globe, to people of color everywhere, but in particular to Africa, in terms of the impact that colonization has had on our psyche, that has had on our minds and our spirits, in terms of the lies that we've been told, the falsehoods that have been visited upon us so we could be conquered, that we are less than human, that we are shunned and cursed by the divine, that we are supposed to be enslaved, that we are supposed to be ruled. No, that's not true. And our answer, we know that's not true. That's why it's painful. We feel within ourselves, something is amiss.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have been traumatized physically, spiritually, and mentally to accept these untruths. But somewhere within us, there's always a spark that I call it the soul that knows the truth of who we are, that rejects these. It can be very suppressed in some of us because of the trauma and the experiences that we've had. But we really know the truth because that's how we're designed to always know the truth. And it's a matter of us coming to the realization that we can change what's within us. We don't have to wait for the end of racism or the end of neo-colonialism or whatever type of form of oppression you want to call it. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have to wait for that. We have the capacity within ourselves to rise and thrive in the most difficult of situations. That's what I know our ancestors have done around the world because we're still here. If they didn't do it, we wouldn't be here. They survived the unspeakable horrors of the last 500 years. I'll put it like that. And we take it for granted. We don't think about it. We don't appreciate it because the culture doesn't recognize that, because why would it? It would be contradictory to their goals of keeping us in a certain way of state of mind, because that
Correct.
mindset serves others. It doesn't serve us because it's not the truth. When you know the truth of who you are, the only thing that can happen to you is that you can be physically removed, but you cannot be controlled and you cannot be dominated, because you are sovereign and you know your sovereignty. And that's the important thing for us to recognize.
Ashe. Thank you so very
Thank
much.
you.
The situation, like you, I'm just thinking, like, do we all need to actually, particularly in terms of health, because health is wealth, we all know it, and wealth is
Yes,
life. I mean,
yes,
you just put the whole thing. I could be everything that I want to be, but I'm just down. And it must not even be the prescribed health. It can just
yes,
be the fact that somebody say, Susan, you're poor, and you don't even you're bound to stay poor, and even in the next decade, you never will be anything. Is that not enough disease to kill a whole race?
yes. It's very dysfunctional. We have to look at this from the broader perspective of a consciousness that is fragmented, that objectifies everything, that has no recognition of the truth that all of life is divine, that all of life is connected, and that we are all connected to each other and to ourselves, and that we are created in a magnificent and beautiful way. We're talking about a consciousness that tells us that you're less than that, but that consciousness impacts all of us. It harms not only the recipients, those of us who are surviving and who dare to thrive in this environment, but it also affects the perpetuator. That's why we see people such as the former president of the United States who's so utterly miserable and has all those things that we're told that you're supposed to have in life. Because if we don't have a connection to our spiritual truth and reality, we can have all of the external accoutrements, externalization of wealth and all that. It doesn't matter. The greatest wealth, as you said, is to be healthy. And that health is centered in your identity, knowing the truth of who you are. That yes, your circumstances may indicate that you do not have the financial resources, that the totality that you need to live a good and prosperous life. But love, my dear sister, I would suggest to you, is the greatest wealth. And
Mm,
despite
okay.
the circumstances that we find us, and I know this to be true of Africans around the globe, that when we love ourselves and love and have a sense of community love, of family love, of tribal love, that is protective.
Mm,
You don't have to have a lot to feel loved and to be healthy. And it speaks to our resilience. It speaks to our ability to triumph and overcome even the most difficult circumstances. When I was in college, and I talk about this often because it's so critical it was critical for me to understand. There were studies that were conducted that looked at babies and looked at chimpanzee monkeys who were given all the physical needs to be healthy, the food, the shelter, the clothing, the bedding, etc. But if these babies weren't nurtured, both the chimpanzee and the human babies, if they did not receive love, they withered away and died. That's
Mhm.
how important love is. And I remember there's a book by a brother, Malidomo Somé, of Water and of Spirit, and he talks about his experiences under colonialism in Burkina Faso and what happened to him and his realization of the importance of love and how his community, though they were invaded and thrust into a very difficult situation, they still maintained the love in the midst of great poverty. And there were other aspects as well in terms of the maintenance of their cultural identity. But it was the love that allowed them to survive. And it was the love that he experienced that allowed him to survive the most difficult of situations
Mm.
in a monastery while as a child. So that's what we have to remember. Love is our greatest wealth, and no one can take it away from us. Sister Dr. Marimba Ani, in her book, Let the Circle Be Unbroken, talks about how Africans in the diaspora lost everything in terms of colonialization and our enslavement. But there was something that we didn't lose. Yes, we lost our names. Yes, we lost our cultural identity. Yes, we lost our religion and our connection, but there was something essential that remained on a spiritual level that could not be untouched. And I would suggest that that's the soul, that's the essence of who we are, and that's the place where love springs forth, and that's where love resides within us.
Wonderful, beautiful, excellent. It can I feel it because I come from that part, and so we have that disease of somebody telling you that this
Yes,
is who you are, and then it sticks. But then the next disease is the belief, the fact that you have
yes,
that belief, and the fact that you even trust it. It's like the disease has been made for you to accept that
yes.
subhuman, and you even enjoy it. How do we cure that?
We have to want to let it go. We have, as I said, within us, and let me just say this first, the word dis-ease comes from ease. We're
Mhm.
designed to function with ease. We're designed to function in peace. That's how the great creator made us. We become diseased when we function out of ease.
Mm.
So we're functioning out of ease with the lies that have been imposed upon us.
This
And once
is
we,
ah
yes, yeah,
okay.
DIS-EASE, that's where it comes from. Because
Ashe, this is.
yes,
People, are you
this,
hearing this? Are you hearing this? Let me repeat it again. I'm sorry.
that's
Disease,
okay.
disease, you just have to divide it. This the DIS hyphen is. So it comes from the disease. So you break from the is and you are disease.
Yes, yes, yes. This is the truth. That's where the word comes from because it speaks to how we function on a cellular level, on an organ level, in the body and the mind. When we function with ease, within the truth of who we are, when we know the truth that we are divine beings, when we know the truth that we can overcome anything, when we know the truth that we were created to be healthy, and when we provide our beings with the nutrients it needs, the mind, the body, and the spirit, then we function with these. It doesn't matter what happened. We're not captured by these experiences. We're not captured by our DNA as our genes, as Western medicine would like to lead us to believe. No, our spiritual essence, our sovereignty as divine beings is the controller that allows us to function with ease within the greatest difficulties. How did my ancestors survive in the bowels of a slave ship? How did
Mhm.
they walk out of those? How did they step out of that depraved experience? Months upon months of walking to the coast in chains, of resting in imprisoned tombs they call slave castles, of living in the bowels of slave ships for 90 to 120 days and step off of those boats with sanity, with the ability to still survive and to reproduce. That's a miracle. But that's our legacy and that's our inheritance. And it just is not the inheritance of those of the diaspora, it's the inheritance of all of us because similar situations occurred on the continent as well. This
Correct.
is the truth. This is the truth of what's possible for us. Because when we know the truth, it literally is it's a protective mechanism occurs within us that stops those lies about our inhumanity from affecting us. We function physiologically in a relaxed, in a healthy state that supports our health. But that's why we get sick because we're so distressed emotionally and psychologically with these lies that cause the dysfunction that leads to the disease.
Hmm. Another reflection. We're still not on the Q&A. The Q&A is going to come in the, strategic questions, 15 of them that we'll
Yes,
just be taking one after the other. But now we're just talking about the general, what comes from the
yes.
spirit, what I feel is what I throw out there. Another situation is this. Um, Now we have somebody tell you something, you don't agree, or we learn it through our educational system. We edit all our life. We've been listening to it. The images are the same, constantly repeating the same, start the lie with the image, and you see the same thing, and it actually, is programmed. And then later we are even facilitating. So we then begin to bring now our own young, our children from the generation, and we just facilitate even the process. So nobody's even teaching us anymore. We're the ones now even doing it.
Yes,
That
yes,
continuity of, we were programmed. Nobody is there now. We don't see those slave ships.
yes,
We don't see any sugarcane workers again. I mean, these are things that now are in our in a story. Let's just say story, but it's a reality. But the physical one, so I don't see it. I heard it.
mhm.
It's coming in other forms. What is it that really still make me hang on it? What disease is there? Trust?
Well, I believe what happens to us when we have these experiences, not just the ones you're talking about, but whenever we need to understand that whatever we experience becomes our physiological reality unless we challenge it. So, and we
Mhm.
become traumatized. So, in terms of this, you're right. We hear these things. There's a, a level of what we call vicarious trauma, where we can hear stories, we can see things on television. And last year, during the George Floyd protests and everything that was going on in the US, with many brothers and sisters being harmed and killed, I told people quit watching it because not only it traumatizes us, and we know that vicarious trauma, when we see people being harmed or people being harmed on television, it impacts our mental health because it makes us to feel helpless and hopeless. So we have to be very careful with what we're exposed to. I
Mhm.
do believe also there's a level, and we have to look at it globally, but there is some notion of inheritance of the trauma, but there's also the inheritance of the resilience. And in this disease oriented culture, we tend to focus on what we don't want. So that's why in Western media, as well as amongst our people, we talk more about the disease than we do the health, because we really
Mhm.
don't know how to explore that, because that's not a part of our language. It's not a part of our lexicon in terms of our cultural awareness. We are very disease oriented. That's Western medicine. And
Mm.
fortunately, it is. That's why we're always talking about fixing things. And there's a difference between treating and healing, treating and expressing health. And one thing I know to be true, my sister, is that when we focus on taking care of ourselves and healing ourselves in a broader context, it takes care of many things that we thought we'd have to focus on to fix. Because that's the intelligence of the body.
Mm.
The body is so intelligent. We don't have to tell it what to do and how to do it. It knows what to do. We just have to create for ourselves the environment that allows it to express optimal health and well being as it was designed. So yes, dealing with the trauma, dealing with the historic trauma, looking at the bigger story of our triumph, looking at our history. These 500 years is a very short period of time compared to what we know minimally is at least 5 to 10,000 years of African history. And it goes further than that. It's just not recorded. We have to look at what our ancestors did and built across the continent and in other parts of the world, in southern India, in Australia. We have to look at the truth of who we are, not the limited truth of our scope of our recent 500 years experiences of trauma, destruction, and domination. That's a paragraph in the book of our lifetime experiences as a people.
Wow. Liberation is not just geography, it's just starting with you. It's not a freedom that we need to walk all
Yeah,
the street, all carrying placard. It's really that program that they even love to see us do. That's like you say, with this ease oriented, not health oriented. I want to touch
yeah,
on that point that you talked about love and because it's very important. I take a critical
yes,
case study or an example, African migrants, for instance. When we travel back to the continent, whether for vacation or for whatever, the moment you already just think, I'm going, it's like you already have cured yourself from a disease. And then the
yes,
moment you get on the plane and you already are in there, you cured another disease. The moment you land on the continent and you feel the warmth and your feet touch the earth, it's like you've already cured another disease. Now you
yeah.
get into the family, the love and everything. You have 6 weeks or what vacation. The day you're leaving, the thought of leaving, the disease
Yeah,
start. You bought the
yeah.
plane, the disease increase. You drop at the airport here, it even doubles. So
We have, yes, we have to understand that what you so beautifully described reflects the consciousness, not only your consciousness, but the consciousness of the space in which you dwell. And so many of my friends who have visited West Africa, I've been to North Africa, I haven't been to West Africa yet, but so many of my friends who have gone home said to me, there's such a difference. They feel that relief. They know it's different. It's the difference in the level of consciousness because it's not just what we think and feel, but it's the consciousness of the space. So the homeland, yes, it's a consciousness of love and connection. And that's what you feel when you start, you reconnect to it when you make the plan to go home. And when you get home, you feel it more. I felt similarly in Jamaica, which is it's my most favorite place on this side of the world. And I feel similarly, and others have told me Jamaica is very similar to Ghana and West Africa. Yes, one of my colleagues, I'll just share this as an example. One of my colleagues is a Palestinian brother who lived in Libya. He grew up in Libya. And he told me when he came to the United States, he suddenly became afraid of African men, of Black men. And he said he knew he had grown up around Africans his whole life. He knew there was something different, but he was picking up on the consciousness, the racism that's not just it's present everywhere in these United States because the environment reflects the consciousness of the group because we're all connected. So you feel the difference. And there are many studies that have been conducted recently looking at local consciousness, looking at global consciousness and how individuals can impact that. For example, the Maharishi University back in the 1970s in the United States decided that they wanted to research how meditation could impact a city. And they had a formula to figure out the number of people needed to meditate to practice TM meditation for a few months to see if without talking to anyone or interacting with local people, just going into the city, meditating, and to see if that presence of those meditating in peace and harmony would have an impact on the larger group. And yes, it did. They conducted this study in Washington, D.C., and they told the city what they were going to do, and they were laughed at, of course. But as over the months, as the crime rate began to change and certain economic indicators began to improve, the city became involved in the study because they saw the difference. And they've gone all over the world. They've gone into war zones and into other places and shown that when people simply meditate, there is a difference. There's a shift in the general consciousness. So that's what you're talking about, that you felt and that others feel when they go home, because that consciousness is very different from what you experience in Germany and in the Western world. And it's healthy and it's regenerating because it's connected to the truth of who we are.
Hmm. So, all right, but I will not go to. I'm not in the continent all the time, and we are 4 billion or million out here, dispersed
Yes.
all over geography. So, how do we achieve that despite being out of that consciousness? How do we achieve that?
How do we achieve it? That's a beautiful question. Well, we achieve it, as I mentioned, by doing what we need to do, creating the healthy internal environment. When we remove those lies, when we remove the toxins, the harm that has visited upon us in these environments, then we begin to reflect the truth of who we are. That's what I've done. I know the truth. I know I'm connected. Part of the reason why I know the truth is that I feel it because I meditate every day. I have meditated all of my adult life sporadically. I'll tell the truth on myself, but I made a commitment 6 years ago to meditate every morning on love.
Mhm.
And it's changed my life because love is the essential nature of the universe as I know it to be true. And when I connect to it, it not only improves my health, but I know I'm sending love to others. There was,
Mhm.
and I'll just give you an example. There was a study. These are some of the things that helped. This study in particular helped me to understand the power of prayer. There's a very, very progressive and forward thinking cardiologist, a heart specialist in the US, who wanted to study the power of prayer in a hospital setting. So he took a group of people who were in the intensive care unit who had heart attacks and other critically life endangering heart issues. And half of them were prayed for and half of them weren't. The doctors and the nurses didn't know who were prayed for and who weren't prayed for. And at the end of the study, his name is Dr. Randy Bird. It was published in the Southern Medical Journal in the late 80s, I believe, found that the people who were prayed for by several people across the country, 4 or 5 people, no one died in that group. It's about 300 people in the whole study, so it's about 150, give or take a few. No one died in the group that was prayed for. They went home faster. They experienced fewer complications
Mhm.
in comparison to those who weren't prayed. That's the power of prayer. So when we connect in that consciousness of love, of peace, of wanting to reach out to our family, to our brothers and sisters, it makes a difference. It impacts the consciousness around the world. That I know to be true. And people say to me sometimes, Sister Susan, well, I'm just one person. I know you are a precious being. And you don't know the impact that your prayers and your love has on others. Because ultimately, and this is what I've been, it was a profound awakening for me to understand that yes, while we as humans in our ego consciousness want to impact large numbers, ultimately there's only one life. So when we give love to one person or to 10 or 10,000, it's still the same love. It still has that same impact on the oneness that we all share because
Mm.
it's pure, because it's real and it's meaningful. So we don't have to worry about the numbers. Just being a light makes a difference. Just being fully present in the truth of who we are and the truth of who our ancestors knew us to be has a profound impact because that love is so much more powerful than that force of disconnection, that force of those lies. And that's why one loving one makes such a difference.
Hmm. I know when people hear love, they think, because it's also another topic. The way
Yes.
we see love, I mean, connected spirituality and the energy is totally different from what the love that has been packaged, and in terms of presence, in terms of holding hand, in terms of physical body touch. But is that what you're talking about? What is that love?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Love is the essence of the universe. It is a creative force that binds us together. It's a spiritual power that is unmatched there's nothing that can overcome love. I'm talking about love from the perspective of paying attention to ourselves and to others, of being aware of the truth of who and what we are, of having an appreciation for the truth of who and what we are, for having an acceptance of who and what we are, not who and what we want to be, but as we are, and for allowing that to come forth. Love from the egoic perspective is is confirmational to a certain extent, but love from the spirit is transformational.
Mm,
That's the difference. It transforms everything because it takes that which was out of order, that which was disease, which was out of harmony, and puts it back into harmony with the truth of as we were designed to be, with the truth of the universe, with the basic fundamental elements of the universe as the divine created it in us.
hmm. Very essential. The very essential thing that I want to say, particularly we are still on this, and I think that's what you were saying, rediscovering, becoming the new you, the new version of you.
Yes.
Now we see that a lot of things that we do in the system in which we grow are maybe even opposite, because I'm taught, oh, I have a partner and then I will get love. And my partner, oh no, not this one I get love. No, I can get love from my family. Oh, my family doesn't give me love, then I'm not loved. Then I can, it's like you need to buy love. You need to look for love
Yes.
in another place. Is that it?
Yes.
And you're
No.
saying, no, start by you.
Yes, that's the love from the egoic perspective. That's the love from being we have to gain something in order to endow ourselves with worth. By virtue of our existence, we are worthy. And when we come to understand our innate worth and value and precious, unique aspects, then you know the truth. And this is what I share with my clients and my patients. You have to love yourself first and foremost.
Mhm.
And then when you love yourself, you can love others, not the
Yes.
opposite. This culture tells us the opposite. Yes, babies need it because they can't, they are helpless. But and the love that we receive as children endows us with that opportunity to come into the awareness that we must first and foremost love ourselves. Because
Hmm.
this culture doesn't teach us that. But
Mhm.
that's the truth. And when you love yourself and you are endowed with that realization, then you can love others even more fully. I'll share with you another study that I love to talk about. And as I said, that when we look at Africa and our sense of community and belonging, it's so important. It doesn't matter what else you have because that love is the glue that holds everything together.
Hmm.
There was a study that was conducted in the United States in the 1960s looking at a town in Pennsylvania where there was a very low incidence of heart disease. And what was thought initially back then, we always think is a physical reason that there must be something genetic. These were primarily Italian Americans who had very much the multi-generational structure of their families as we do in Africa and in other parts of the world. They were doing all of the wrong things. They were eating the wrong foods. They weren't exercising. They were smoking and drinking, but they had a very low incidence of heart disease.
Hmm.
So the researchers wanted to think it was something genetic. It wasn't, because the residents of the towns nearby were from the same area. But what they found, the difference amongst these people was is that they had a sense of community, that they supported each other, that they lived with the grandparents and the grandchildren, and they were protected. Well, nobody wants to believe that in terms of researchers, that the sense of community protected them from heart disease, but it did. And they went back 10 years later expecting to see more heart disease as they became more Americanized, and that's what happened. They had a higher incidence as the nuclear family structure became the prominent family model for them. And they went back 10 years later thinking, well, since the cholesterol projects had gone on, that there would be a decrease in their incidence of heart disease. And the opposite had happened. They were doing all of the right things, eating properly, exercising, not smoking, not drinking, and they have more heart disease because they felt isolated.
Mm.
And they felt severed from their community, their sense of community. And that's so important in terms of specifically what you're talking about. We feel isolated because of these lies and because of being away from our homeland and from those structures. But within ourselves, we can feel connected. The external doesn't have to change for us to experience a different reality, for us to experience the truth and the richness and the love and the peace that's within us, that our culture and our community brought forth. That's what we can do. So it doesn't matter where you are. There's a difference between feeling isolated and being alone. I'm very much alone in my home, but I don't feel isolated. I feel more connected now than I did when I was out in the world. I'm so much more connected, thankfully, through the technology. But also in my heart, I feel so much more connected now because during this pandemic, it gave me time to really be at peace and to be quiet and to focus on the truth and to live in that truth and to not get stressed out about what was going on because I know the truth that whatever humanity has faced, we're going to get through this because greater is what's within us than what is within the world. That's the
Mm.
truth as I know it. And we
Mm.
just have to remember it and experience it.
Wow. This is, whew, I don't even know how to thank
Mm,
you or to thank the creator and our ancestors for giving this
mm,
message, because what you say is
mm.
just, it's just that medicine. So if we take it and I like, so if we want to live in the truth, so we can say us, the disease among us Africans is love.
The
My
disease is what?
the
You broke.
disease, I said it, so if we want to put it in a clear form or in a more holistic way, and the truth
Okay.
is, so if we are suffering, if we should suffer from a disease, that disease should be called another name, love maybe.
Yeah. The
And we
lack of
should
love.
not suffer.
Yes, we should. Yes, the cure, the healing is to end the disease of the lack of love in our consciousness and our experience, and to know that love is at the essence, the very essence of who we are. Our ancestors knew this. They knew the elements of their divine creation. They knew that they were created in peace. They knew that they were created in love. They knew that they were created in harmony. They knew that they were created in intelligence and wisdom and vitality and a life force that flows through them when allowed the opportunity to express fully would endow them physically with what was already true on a spiritual level. That's why they were able to create, to tap into the divine knowledge of the universe and create the monumental cultures that they did and civilizations that they did because they were connected divinely and spiritually to the truth of who and what they are. And that is accessible to all of us at any time. No, it doesn't happen overnight, but we have to set the intention to make the decision that we want to be our new selves and to allow that intelligence to begin to express through us. We don't tell it what to do, we give it space to do what it does. That's the truth as I know it.
Hmm. That's so powerful. We're living in a very critical situation.
Yes.
Since last year, we have the pandemic and the fear, the loss of life, everything has changed. What should we be learning in this change? How do we fit in it?
Well, as I think I shared this a little bit, but I'll go into it in greater detail. The most important thing, I shared this with you before we came on, my sister. When the pandemic hit, I realized very early on that the most important aspect of my work as a physician is to remind everyone of this truth that your body is designed magnificently. And when you take care of yourself and stay healthy, you don't have to worry about anything. I'm not saying to be reckless, but to understand that your body is so intelligent. I can't fully explain or share how magnificent, in particular, the immune system is. The immune system is designed to protect us from everything external, from everything we're exposed to. It's designed to recognize what we call self and non-self. So when anything tries to invade us, be it an organism, a bacteria, a fungus, a virus, a chemical, it recognizes it as something that doesn't need to be present. And it has multiple levels of protection. It's not just one antibody. There's a multitude of protective mechanisms that our immune system contains within us that functions without our conscious thinking about it to protect us when it's healthy and when it's in balance. And I'll tell you my story personally. I haven't had a cold in almost 6 years. I used to get colds every 3, 4 months, have the flu, all that. And I'm a doctor, right? But when I started really taking care of my health, particularly, I'll tell this truth, taking vitamin D in the wintertime, I haven't had a cold in 6 years. I haven't been sick. So I don't fear infections for myself personally because I know I'm healthy and I know what to do. And that's what gets lost in these messages because again, we're focusing so much on the dis-ease that we don't want. We're not fully instructing and endowing our people, our population, our human family with the truth of how to stay healthy. That's the most important thing. You want to prevent a disease rather than treat it. That I know to be true. An ounce of prevention is worth tons of cure because it keeps you healthy and it keeps you in a state of being able to prevent what you don't want to experience. And the simple things that we can do, most importantly, is to stop being so distressed. When we're constantly living with stress, with fear, with anxiety, with worrying about whatever we're worrying about, be it the pandemic, being our personal circumstances, be it economics, whatever, constantly worrying about things weakens the body and makes us more susceptible to developing what we don't want to develop. That's why relaxing and meditating and detoxifying our minds is so important. We don't even look at emotions in Western medicine. I was taught it's not important. It's critically important. Stress is the leading cause of the dysfunctions we don't want to have. And when we address the stress, it helps our bodies to relax and to heal itself. Healing occurs in the states of ease. That's what I know to be true.
Hmm.
Yes.
Wow. Um, I'm I'm thinking a lot because you said something. We are trained or in a system where we grow in, we are disease oriented. But of course, we are also the disease of fighting to break away from a system, to liberate,
Yes.
to freedom. And then we choose, if you look at the methods, we need to go to war, we need to arm
Yes.
ourselves, we need to protect ourselves, we need to have
Yes.
weapons, we need to have an army, we need to have are these all just not physical? What about the spiritual, what you're saying?
Yes.
Solution.
Excuse me. Yes, we do. We don't look at real solutions in these cultures. We look at problems solutions that are really problem oriented in terms of more separation, more division, more destruction. We have to remember that whatever we're experiencing physically came from a consciousness, came from a state of mind that created these external forces and external experiences. So until that consciousness that created these situations is healed, we'll continue to have different aspects of these problems and looking for solutions within the problem instead of looking for solutions at another level. That's why consciousness is so important. And someone asked me a similar question the other day, and I didn't get a chance to more fully consider it, or the answer came later, which it sometimes does. But going back to what I said, shared about those consciousness studies. As we grow in consciousness, that impacts the general consciousness. So we don't have to look specifically at fixing something, because as we transform, it helps to shift the consciousness that will fix the external and heal the external. We want to heal this. We don't want to solve the problem, because solving the problem, the solution is normally a new problem. But when we heal it instead of cure it, that's the difference. We will
Mhm.
see a different world. And this is what I share often with my clients, specifically talking about healing racism and colonization, the impact of colonialism. We don't have to wait for it to end for us to feel better.
Mhm.
That's why we're fighting and saying it's got to be over, it's got to end, so we think we'll get relief. No, we can get relief now when we shift our awareness and consideration of these experiences. When we come out of a victim state of mind and feeling that we can only react, that we have these automatic stress responses that harm us, when we shift our identity to one that's more empowered, that when it knows that we are overcomers, that we are the children of the descendants of those who refuse to die, that we're divine beings, those tremendously shape our outcomes in the way we dwell in the world. And I believe as we become more spiritually in tune, our spirituality, our divinity literally acts as a protective immune system on that level, that shields us from the harm as it comes, as it approaches us, as it comes at us. We don't feel the same. That's my experience. When I experience racism now, because I fully endow the truth in myself, it doesn't bother me as it once did, because
Mhm.
I know the truth. Yeah, I know the truth. It doesn't hurt. I'm protecting my health, because we know in the United States, each and every day, 200 African people, people of African descent, African Americans, die young, die prematurely due to their experiences of racism. I'm not talking about health disparities, I'm talking about the experiences and the internalized harm that racism has visited upon us, because we think we have no choice, and we're so distressed by virtue of not having the resources or the understanding of how to respond in a healthy way and how to stop reacting. Doesn't matter if someone tries to dehumanize me. I know who I am. I know I'm a divine being. You're stupid. You're lost, and you're not. And really, the truth of the matter is that you're just projecting onto me the lie that you know, that you believe to be true of yourself.
Mhm.
Because if you were a divine being in consciousness, you would only be giving love. You would only be giving compassion to
Mhm.
others. So we have to understand that these projections onto us have nothing to do with the truth of who we are. And we have to allow the truth of who we are to come forth within us to protect us. There was a study, and I'll give you an example. It's in broader terms, but it shows how consciousness, how identity plays a role. About 30 years ago in the US, in Chicago, there was a professor, psychologist, who was doing some research at Illinois Bell, which is a phone company. It was part of AT&T. And it was a 12-year study. And in the midst of the study, the company, due to a court ruling, was ordered to break up, to divest itself of its assets. So it was very,
Mhm.
very stressful. And these men were primarily European American managers making good money, but a large number of them was having heart attacks, suicide, depression, because of this stress of this breakup, with this corporate breakup. So the researcher was asked to look at this group of men, because there were some who weren't getting sick. And there were so many who were having heart attacks that they put a cardiac unit at the corporate headquarters to start treating them before they went to the hospital. It was that bad. And what the researcher found, which has been confirmed in many, many studies, that the group of men who were not having heart attacks, who were not drinking, who were not suicidal, who were not depressed, saw this experience very differently. Even though they had the same external demographics, they had a different level of mind, or we would call them personality traits or characteristics in the research sense, but in the truest sense, they had a different level of consciousness. And they saw this experience as a challenge, something to look at in a positive way. They saw themselves as having a commitment to themselves personally to deal with it in a healthy way. And they saw it was commitment challenge, and I'm missing one. I'm sorry, I forgot one of them, but there were three C's. In control, they felt that they were in control of themselves internally, and it protected them from getting sick. And this study has this notion has been researched in many other settings using people from different demographics, different ethnic groups, not using them, but examining them and researching and finding the same thing to be true, that when people have a different perspective that's healthier in the midst of great challenges, it protects us. And as I said, this goes back to our ancestors, to those who not only walked off of those enslavement ships, but those who survived enslavement. They had a perspective that allowed them to endure and to overcome it internally.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's true for
Mhm.
us today.
Very true. I mean, imagine, sometimes we just imagine like you have an organization out there where it's called where there's no doctor. So how do they live? So the less, the more their faith or their belief and their way of doing things is more. And that's why we see even in the communities on the continent, the more you are from the urban, the more healthy and the more
Yeah,
things. So even in another secular situation, the more you are not really focused on the possibilities that we're given. Oh, I watch TV, or I listen to this, or I have to do this. The more healthy and the more conscious you are. True.
absolutely. The healthiest I am is when I don't watch television, because it can cause so much distress. We think of it as something we have to do and supposed to do. But when I don't watch television and I'm watching programs such as yours and my brother Philippe and other programs, and learning more about Africa through YouTube and documentary, I am so much healthier and happier because
Mhm.
I'm getting food that nourishes me. And I'm calling your information that offers transformation and inspiration. It's so helpful. Yes, this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to find those resources that uplift us, not those that tear us down and make us sick. And I would also remind you, as I shared, when we watch television, we're not only tapping into, it's not only affecting us, we're tapping into the whole group that's watching those programs. So when we feel anxiety and depression, and sometimes we're feeling other people's challenges too, because we're connected.
Mm.
And that's, yes, yes. That's why it's best just to let it go. That's why we feel the difference, because let me give you an example. There was a, a, a therapist. I read her book. She was a very open-minded, progressive psychotherapist who was treating children who had been sexually abused. And she was very connected energetically. I'll put it like that. She was very intuitive. And she said that she realized that when we talk about sexual abuse in children, it's not just the act that harms them, is living in the environment where the perpetuator has these thoughts, because she found that she was treating a father who had not harmed his daughters, but he had thoughts about harming them sexually. And he wanted to stop it. So he went to the therapist before he harmed them. But when she talked to the daughters and treated them, she found that they were having dreams of him harming them because they tapped into those thoughts, because the thoughts were in the environment and they interpret it into their dreams. So that's why I say it's just not our thoughts, it's others. We experience others, and it depends on where we are. If we are in a higher state, then we tap into that universal high consciousness. But if we're in different states, we tap into those states. So we can feel more distress because we're not just feeling our individual pain and challenge, we're tapping into others. So I share with my patients and clients, when you're feeling distressed, you have to stop and see, what were you thinking before you felt the distress? Were you thinking something that led you into this physical distress, or did it come out of nowhere? Sometimes when it comes out of nowhere, you're picking up on other people's energies. And that's why you can begin to make the difference and understand that you're just very sensitive and absorbing those energies from the thoughts and feelings from others. Because as I said, we are all connected.
Wow. Um, Sorry, Naisha, thank you for sending in the questions. And we have 15 of them. I think the number one question is already been explained in a lot of formats and everything. These ones now are going really into probably medical or his Dr. Ferguson's area of studies, where he has to actually respond like what is holistic medicine, so what is super healing, or what is this, that he just
Yes.
goes straight for us to answer. But if you're joining us on the Pan African Daily TV, we are talking about how to become the new version of you. So you automatically just realize that if you are the old version of you, you've been carrying a lot of things that you can just let go and become you and become healthy and happy. So if you thought your life is over, after this conversation, you might just begin to think, or you might just realize you're starting your life. It doesn't matter how old you have been, you've been in that old self, you've been in that old burden of years. So, but now you are beginning to let go and just heal yourself and give yourself wealth and love yourself and treat yourself. Because if you don't have it, you can't even give what you don't have. So,
Yes.
that is the conversation of today. And our guest today is a sister, a queen, a daughter of the soil, born and raised of the descendants in America, is a medical doctor by profession, but then has a calling to just reveal what she has apart from
Mm.
just career. So she's a both career, and we've been talking about it. You can be an engineer, you dream to be one, but then you do something out of a passion again of liberation. So that's not a career.
Mm.
So her medical doctorness is something that you have to look not just as a career, but a gift. And she is here to say, now, even before I got into it, I have another gift. And this gift, I just want to help with my people worldwide and to
Yeah.
know that they are healthy. Nothing is wrong with them. Like our brother Refshak is always saying,
Yes.
something happened. And if you know that something happened, so you can heal that something and you become the better version and the best version of yourself. So we're going to go into this one-on-one question.
Okay.
I really would have loved Naisha to join me in the studio and give those questions out, but she is maybe lazy. I don't know what she's doing. She's watching, but she wants to enjoy it because if somebody is a favorite, a mother, and everything, I think Naisha prays to Dr. Ellen. That's what I know.
Oh, I just love her and I love you. She's such a sweet child. And it's been such a pleasure just communicating with her and getting to know her. I truly, I'm trying not to cry, honestly, but I truly know when I have divine appointments, when I meet family members, and that's how I feel about Nisha and you. I've met new family members, and it's just such a beautiful thing. And you're smiling, but you're just beaming. I mean, just I can just sit here and watch you and feel healed and better because you are honestly embodying and expressing everything that I'm talking about. And you've done this. You knew it. You didn't need me to tell you. I'm just confirming what you knew to be true in terms of what you've done with your work. I see it and I felt it from the very first time that I saw your program. I could feel your passion and your commitment to our people. And I thank you again for it. And I see what it does for you because it gives you life.
Yes,
That's what
healing.
passion does. When we really set out to serve our people, to serve humanity, to serve others, it uplifts us. We don't have to look for the reward. The act is the reward. And I see that so fully and so thoroughly in you, my sister.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doc. Right. So we're going to go to the question. I'll skip the first one because it's about your profession and your personality. I think every one of us are here. We're connected in one. And so we even understand who you were. But now we're just getting into the basics of what, let's say, academical level. If I hear some words and some terms, how am I supposed to actually put them into the context in which you have explained it? So the second question will start. How do you define holistic medicine?
Okay, well, holistic medicine from I'll put it this way because I have two definitions. I'll give you the general one. I'll give you mine, which is basically super healing. But the holistic medicine is an approach that recognizes the whole person, the body, the mind, and the spirit all play an important role in health and well-being and in treating diseases, mostly treating diseases. Western holistic medicine, from my experience, is not too different, unfortunately, from Western allopathic medicine in the sense that we focus on treating and curing diseases. And that was my frustration in terms of everything that I learned about other healing systems. When patients came to me, they often just wanted to be fixed and healed. They wanted more. They didn't understand appropriately their role in the development of diseases. So it's been for me a long arc of understanding how to better serve my patients. And that's where super healing comes in. I know that's the next question, correct?
Um,
Is that
yes.
is
What
that
is super healing? Yes.
okay? Well, what as I said, my frustration was that I was focusing as a holistic medicine doctor on curing and you just using alternative and integrative medical techniques to fix something and not to really help create health. So a few years ago, and I've articulated this many times to my friends and to my patients, but in 2012, when I was thinking about creating a television program and writing a new book, the term was literally came from the divine. It was given to me, super healing. And when I heard it, it was July 2012. I knew that was the term that captured the truth. And it would allow me the opportunity to more fully explain a holistic health approach with
Mhm.
the fundamental understanding. In Western medicine and holistic medicine, we still are focusing on diseases. And as I said at the very beginning, when I was in medical school, I learned how amazing and magnificent the body is. We have an amazing body, magnificent mind, an indomitable eternal spirit. And super healing recognizes this truth and that reality as the fundamental basis of everything. We don't start looking at the disease. We start with the truth of who and what we are and how we are designed and created as miracle human beings to help my patients, my clients, create the health to heal and to create the health, the good health that they desire and deserve. So, yes, it encompasses all of the holistic techniques that I've mentioned, the mind body, the Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, African medicine, etc., nutrition, but it encompasses it from the perspective of the truth, not from the perspective of the dis-ease. And doing everything we can in that context to help our clients and patients become aware of that truth so they can allow their bodies, when the body and the mind and the spirit are in harmony, that unleashes the floodgates of super healing, the ability to correct any abnormality, any disease. It's not under our conscious control. It's the intelligence within us that controls us. We're just giving that intelligence room to function, more space to function when we make the commitment, when we detoxify, when we give the nutrients, when we love ourselves, and when we have a healing plan. Those are the fundamental elements and aspects of super healing as I currently know it today, because it's unfolding and it's evolving.
Mhm. Wow. Thank you. The next question
Welcome.
was, um, why is holistic health so important? I think you've said it a couple of times, but just take it like a question.
Yes.
Why is it so
Well,
help?
when we holistically function, it's kind of like turning up the gears to optimal functioning, to
Mhm,
optimal opportunity for functioning. When we focus on preventing a disease, curing a disease, or even healing a disease, we're not looking at in its totality. And it's our totality of being that is the most crucial and vital element of healing, of being healthy. We can't be healthy just exercising and exercising, eating right, and sleeping properly, and focusing on our physical form. If we don't deal with the mind, the stress that we live with, if we don't engage our spirituality, then we're not. We can improve our health, no doubt. But if we want to achieve optimal health and radiant well-being, as we are designed to experience, then we have to encompass all of us. We have to love ourselves and take care of ourselves out of loving ourselves.
mhm, mhm. That's very fundamental. I think the basics of it goes to that. Anyway,
Yeah.
the question is, what is the number one health risk factor most of our people are not aware of?
Well, I think I said it
Mhm,
earlier. I think it's, well, let me put it like this: stress in general is the number one risk factor, because we don't, in Western medicine, allopathic medicine, we don't consider stress in treating, preventing, reversing, and healing diseases. Most doctor visits in the US, 75% from studies, 75 to 80% are stress related. But we as doctors just give our patients prescriptions for the symptoms that they're having. So stress in general is the greatest risk factor. And I would say, as I perhaps have mentioned earlier, in particular for Africans in the diaspora,
mhm.
the stress of racism is even the more critical one, because it's so unrelenting and, and unabated. And we don't know how to respond to it in a healthy way.
So it's just but evident if stress is the number one, and we take our daily schedule and we begin to tick the checklist. I mean, I even wonder. That's why you say our bodies are a super healing thing. Because if we look at the process at which we run out
Yes,
and we begin
yes,
to put the stress at, then there's just no way we can even get out of this. Am I right?
yes, yes. Until we fully understand the role that it plays in our health and how it's impacting us, because we take it as normal. We take it as normal to be stressed. No, it's not. It's not normal. But that has become our normal because of the dysfunctional culture and societies we find ourselves operating in. And it's
Mm.
dysfunctional for everyone. I mean, it's not just for African people, it's just different levels of dysfunction, but it's not healthy. And we can change it internally when we change our identity, when we stop seeing ourselves as victims, and that we have no other choice but to grin and bear it. That's our real problem: grinning and bearing it, and suffering in silence, and suppressing it, and medicating it with unhealthy ways, with overeating, with alcohol, with drugs, with avoidance. We don't have to avoid anything when we know the truth. The Christian Bible says greater is what that's in you than what's in the world. That's the truth. We just didn't know how to interpret that and how to apply it. Greater is the divinity, the healing capacity that's within you, in comparison to what's in the world, and to comparison to what's made you diseased and sick. And I want to share one other thing about healing that's very important to understand. Whenever a person, and I believe we can see this in this culture, whenever there's a healing crisis, a life and death crisis. And I saw this with my patients many times when I was a resident in particular. There comes a times where, and this is what we're saying and seeing in terms of what the media tells us about what's going on with climate crisis, as well as other aspects of the world, that this is a make it or break it time, that we only have a limited window to heal the planet, to stop all this pollution and poisoning. However, in a healing crisis, and from a metaphysical perspective, people talk about chemicalization. We see it in terms of medicine. There's a time frame when we can't tell if the patient is going to live or die. They are critically ill because the body has this massive detoxification. The immune system has triggered this response where the body is releasing everything it can to fight off this disease. It happens with COVID, it happens with infections, it happens with other situations where we just don't know because there's this massive release of toxins. And if the body, if the person, if the patient can process those toxins as they're released and get them out of the body, they live. They overcome the disease. But if the toxins are released and it's too much for the body to process, then they don't. They die. They succumb and they die. So I would suggest looking at what's going on the planet right now. This is where we are. And it looks really bad. It looks very frightening. But I am very faithful that Mother Earth and the divine have a whole lot more healing up their sleeve to help us get through this, for us individually and globally to get through this crisis. And that the earth is healing itself. I see it where I live and others see it. It's just not reported on the news, but I'm seeing vibrant colors and changes in nature that suggest healing to me. And I've seen this for the last 4 or 5 years. So I live in the country, so I have a little different perspective. So I'm very hopeful that whatever we're facing as a human family, and in particular what we face as the African part of the human family, that we're going to get through this. We will survive. Mm. And the new you, the new us is coming forth. This is the Chinese language, and I'm sure there's a term somewhere in an African language that crisis and opportunity are one and the same. This is our crisis and this is our opportunity. And we can use this energy to catapult us forth into a higher state of being, a healthier state of being. That I know to be true. So I would say to my brothers and sisters from my heart, fear not. Don't be afraid. Greater is what within you is in this world. Don't let the world frighten you. Know the truth. Begin to heal yourself. Begin to look differently. You don't need a guide. The guide is within you. You just need someone to remind you of the truth. We are sovereign beings. That's how we were designed. And in this moment, I know to be true, the most important thing you can do is to actualize and realize your sovereignty, to step into the truth of who you are, not only for yourself, but for your loved ones. Be a light unto them. Be a light as you are. That's what they need. They need to have hope because the world has totally thrown everything at us to make us afraid and little and to be traumatized. And no, we can use that for food, just as the lotus emerges from the mud. This is the time for us to emerge in the consciousness of beauty, love, and truth and light, to be who we are, to be who our ancestors knew who we were. That's what I know to be true.
Ashe, you're talking and I feel like just holding someone close to me.
Yes,
so tight.
Yes.
I've never experienced such a power. This is the kind of moments that when we say we are when we are together, when we are closer, when we are in the same spirit, in the same space, you feel it. And people call it whatever. I don't know, but I am just feeling something. And so it's so true. It's so powerful. It is just that. And you were just dropping it. You were just dropping it like, and Ashe. I don't know. Even though we're disconnected, distance, and we've also seen that it's not even just the physical, and that when the spirit is one, we can heal each other. Is that true? I think that's the 7th question.
Yes. As I mentioned in that study, yes, whenever we pray for others, whenever we give love, that's healing. It doesn't matter. There's no such thing as distance and oneness. It's just, yes, on a physical level, we see distance, but the truth is that we're not. We're all connected. on a very important spiritual level. Let me just give you an example so you could, sometimes our minds need concrete examples. And I talk about this in my book, Super Healing. I read about a study that was conducted by the American Army. What they wanted to know about the body and how connected the body is to itself. So what they did, they took scrapings from inside the mouth of several military women and men, and they put it in test tubes. And they took it down the hallway to a lab and had some type of instrument where they could measure changes in these white blood cells,
Mhm.
basically. And the men and women in the study were shown very traumatic, emotionally evocative movies. And they wanted to see if those white blood cells were still connected, even though they were out of the person's bodies. And yes, they were. As these military women and men saw these very emotionally traumatizing scenes, they their white blood cells responded. Similarly, there was a change. And so they said, well, let's see how far away it can happen. Up to 50 miles away, they could still see a response in these separated white blood cells.
Hmm.
When the person's, yes, and they stopped at 50 miles, they got tired of it. I don't think there's a way to fully measure it, because the body's connected, we're all connected. We also know, just in terms of transplants, when people receive organs from others, they have memories in them. They know certain things about the donors that they shouldn't know. Everything is connected. That's how the divine made the earth and made us. So yes, when we sit in love, when we stand in love, there's no separation. And when we send love, it helps to promote healing. I've seen so many people prayed out of difficult situations and healing crises. And as I said, that study showed it. But we don't have to have a study. We just have to look at our experience. Because the challenge of Western medicine and science has always led us to believe that we have to have corroboration. No, we don't. We just have to have truth and to recognize the truth within ourselves. That's the most important cooperation.
Hmm.
Our minds need a little more, but the spirit knows when you know the truth and you stand in your sovereignty, nothing can shake that, because that's how we're designed. Absolutely.
Hmm.
We are beings of truth. That's our divinity. And when we feel out of ease, that's telling us that we're not functioning in our true identity. That's why it hurts so much. Because when you receive something, as you said earlier, that is the truth, it makes you feel really good because that's what it's designed to do. And our emotions, all of them are necessary because they instruct us as to where we are functioning in relationship to the truth of who we are. So when we feel joy, when we feel peace, when we feel bliss, when we feel inspired, when we feel passionate, empathy, all of those beautiful emotions, when we feel beauty, when we feel awe, we're in our connected states. And when we feel angry, when we feel pain, when we feel upset, when we feel distressed, when we feel depressed, when we feel less than, it's telling us we're out of the truth. That's what it came to tell us.
Hi. Whew. People, now you see, it is not, I'm Dr. Tata because they gave me an honorary doctor. This is a professional doctor, academic doctor. You know, the kind of doctor you go to the hospital, he knows your inside and your outside. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
talking to the community. These are the people you go to them and you trust your life, and they tell
Yes.
you, sign a paper, we're going to operate you, you have this lung that is not functioning. We believe them and we sign those papers. Dr. Elaine is that person we go to and say, you will die in the next minute because you need to take a chemo. I would believe, you would believe. But people, she is telling us that yes, that one too is, but what is fundamental is the truth that we shall live in. That's the healing. That is what she's telling you. Like she would tell you, oh, you need to take one capsule in the morning and in the evening. Why do we choose to believe these other conversations, doctor? Please tell me. Why?
Well, because we've been taught that that's the only option and that's the highest level of science and all those other things. And let me just say that it has its place. And oftentimes, when for emergencies, for chronic diseases, when we're so out of control, we have to get some medications to help stop those symptoms so we can get back on track. But there's so much more we can do to help our bodies heal. Western science has a paradigm that in Western medicine that tells us your diseases, you're going to get a disease, your DNA controls everything, you have no choice, your family history is your destiny, all those things that aren't true. And we know them now. And what I find unfortunate is that as we discovered these through research studies, we didn't change Western medicine, our paradigm. We're still on treating diseases. But we know through open-minded scientists that our DNA is not our destiny. I was taught in medical school in the 70s after Watson and Crick, who discovered DNA, which they really didn't. There was a woman who really discovered it, Rosalind Franklin. They just kind of took her research and used it. That's a whole nother story. But we were led to believe that DNA captured, that ruled us, and it doesn't. That was that was a paradigm of imposition of Western scientific thought that was unfounded and untrue. What we know now, thanks to the world of epigenetics, which is a relatively new field of research, looking at how the internal cellular environment impacts our DNA. Our DNA responds to our environment, not our environment responds to the DNA. So if you live healthy, you literally turn on healthy genes. If you live unhealthy, you turn on disease-causing genes. If you live with stress, you trigger your DNA, your genes to age faster. But all of that can be reversed. This is what we know to be true. We're not telling people the truth. You are the captain of your ship. You are a sovereign being. That's how you were designed. And you can make a difference. It doesn't matter what has happened earlier. You can improve your health. You can slow down and reverse aging. You can improve your thinking, your cognition. You can improve your muscle functioning. Everything can get better if you just give it what it needs. This I know to be true. Ashe. Ashe to your thigh.
The truth. The truth. Oh my God. African people, we have suffered. Mm, we have suffered.
We are we
Just,
are infinite beings. We're infinite.
I mean,
We are let me just say one last thing. We're divine beings having a human experience. And your body was created for it to be the vehicle of your experience. Your body is not who you are. It is your divine living temple of expression. So don't worry about what somebody tells you about transhumanism and all that silliness. No, your identity, your being is beyond your physical body. Ashe.
I, hmm, hmm. I mean, like the new us. For those that are watching us, I mean, please just bear with me. I'm typically an African. When I said African, a village African. I don't know how I can keep this without this kind of body expressions that you see me make. It doesn't
Wonderful.
function. I cannot be politically, professionally correct in front of you just to not smile, not scream, not do some things. When I'm like, so what am I saying? To get even, Dr. Elaine, we will have to give you another name on the Pan African Daily. I'm telling you, I don't know. We will not go by this, whether it's Dr. Super Healing. I mean, we've been hearing this kind of concept, Ayurveda, what whatever coming from other cultures. We have to look for a name for you that is so unique in the liberation. Dr. Healing, Dr. Revelation, Dr. Liberator, Dr. What I don't know. But
Mm,
from today, we have to go down in meditation. Naisha, note that out. We have to consult with our ancestors. They will have to give you another
mm,
name that
mm, mm,
that when we tap on that name, every African is on the truth.
mm, mm. Oh, I'm so honored. I really am. Thank you.
No, we've had all the theories. It's a fact. We go and we know that the system is designed to lie, to exploit, to destroy, just like the word is saying, to direct us and smile at you and say, this is the truth. And we've been holding it, we embrace it, we love it, we share it, and like this is the truth. And we have
Mm,
one of us that just coming and just breaking this truth. For those who don't
mm.
know Dr. Elaine Ferguson, to get her on a program on biggest TVs like ABC, there, NBC, BBC, CNN, if you don't have a 5-digit sum, you would not even book her. And now the sister, the queen, is coming to say, I am not interested in all this. I just want to liberate my people with what I
Yes,
can, with the
yes.
truth, with what I
Mm,
know, despite being of that high end, Professor, Doctor, what, with all the experiences of what I've seen, this is the truth. I don't know how much, I'm not able to thank you. It is not,
mm,
I'm not able to say thank you to you, but I think the people that
mm.
are watching and that will continue to share this video is the first thing that we are liberating, like you actually said, redesigning the new version of herself. Me particularly sitting here, even with what I thought I know, even with the liberation, even I know I'm the goddess of love. I open the gates of love. But with
Yeah.
what I'm just getting again, now I see the queen mother goddess of love sitting right here.
Oh my goodness.
Am
Thank
I going mad now? Or what is it that is happening to me? Please just tell me. Am I the only
It's
one?
the
I know we are.
spirit,
I'm not
honey.
the only.
It's the spirit. It is not me. It is the spirit of the divine coming through us all. And I just can't thank you enough. I'm so honored. I am so deeply honored. And I must again acknowledge what you're doing. And I must also acknowledge my family, my parents. I stand on the shoulders of giants. I come as one, I stand as 10,000. I am merely the vessel. I'm very clear. I ask spirit, I always ask, use me, allow me to speak through me, keep my silliness out of the way. And this is how spirit uses me. And I've always, since I was a child, I saw as a little girl my neighbors coming home and I could feel their pain. And I remember thinking I didn't see it on the weekends. And ultimately, many years later, I realized I was feeling the burden that they were bringing home from their jobs of being Black in a world that didn't love them. And I just have always wanted to help my people. This is for such a time as this. This is why I'm here. And I feel I've kind of been held in bay to this moment. And I'm just so very, very grateful, deeply grateful for the opportunity to speak and to be on your platform. I'm truly honored. You have no idea. This is a day I will truly remember as a very precious and special one for me in terms of the work that I'm doing for our people. I want our people to be free. I almost come crying. I want them to be free. I want my people to be happy and to be whole. That's what we were designed to be. And that is still possible for us. It does not matter what we have experienced because I said this on the PBS program, if we're on this side of the grass, there's opportunity for healing. It doesn't matter. That's what I know to be true. And that's what I know to be possible for all of us.
We had a colleague or a brother, and we were doing the show with the Independence Day of the Southern Cameroons, Amazonia, and this brother said something that I've got thousands of questions of people asking, um, how could this happen? He said it as a conscious brother. I'm just shouting out to Mbanda, and he said, "We are co-creators.
Yes.
So we are the divine.
Yes.
It is no coincidence. So a co-creator of the universe cannot be the one that would demand from who again? So you're looking for you again, and when
Yes.
you are that, and what is that? It's the
Yes.
same in the,
Yes. Yes. We are co-creators. And when we know that, when we know better, we'll do better. Yes, we will. We will recreate and even beyond that which our ancestors have already created. That's what the world needs. And it's not about structures. The world needs love. The world needs peace. The world needs harmony. And I'm not talking about the peace that's external. I'm talking about the internal peace that expresses into the world. See, that's where we get confused. We're going to have peace with guns. It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
Not to say we don't need to be protected. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about the true peace that passes understanding. That
Mhm.
is the essence, the very essence of who we are is peace. That's what our ancestors taught in Kemet. The Amen state is a state of primordial peace, of infinite pure potential being. That's who we are. And when we get quiet and when we meditate and when we transcend thought, that's where we go. It's within us. We just don't know how to tap into it because we're so stuck on the surface of ideas and beliefs and lies that disserve us. That's why we can't get to peace. That's why we want the external world to be peace at peace so we can find the peace that they thought they created. But no, it's within. That's the truth.
What does, okay, we already, I think we had talked about it. What does success among educated Africans in the diaspora come at such a great price? What
Success, yes, it comes at a great price because we're exposed to more hate, racism, discrimination, and maltreatment. Yes, we in the United States, I'll speak to the United States because that's my home. There, among European Americans or Caucasians, I don't like the word white because it's not true, it's made up. But European Americans, as they become more successful, more educated, they become healthier. So there was a myth, especially after the civil rights movement in the United States, a belief that as we became more educated, we would get healthier. The exact opposite has happened, that African Americans who are educated and economically successful disproportionately experience more dis-ease and premature death. And I'll give you yes, yes, there's research. And I see this with my classmates from college, the Yale class of 2010 of 1970, which was the first class that had a large number of African American men. Yale University, as you know, is an Ivy League school, one of the top schools in the United States. These brothers went on to become very successful captains of industry, physicians, lawyers, um, ministers, journalists, etc. When they went to their 2010 reunion, and Dr. David Williams, who was one of the premier researchers on discrimination in health at Harvard University, talks about this in a TED talk. Their death rate was triple, 3 times that of their classmates, of their European American classmates, because of their exposure to racism. There was a 2017 study that was published by The Ohio State University that looked specifically at this myth. They wanted to prove, they thought they were going to prove, looking at African Americans and Hispanic American professionals, highly educated, highly successful, that as they became more successful, they would become healthier. And they found the exact opposite, that the higher they climbed, the sicker they became, because of their exposure to a more grotesque form of racism that's subtle but unabating in terms of the harm it causes. I've seen it myself, in my career. I've seen it with my colleagues. And we never just talked about it or thought about it in that global context. We thought it was just happening to us. but it happens across the boards. I'm sure it happens in Europe as well as in South Africa and in places where the structures of oppression exist. As you become more successful, you become targeted, you become isolated, you become what I call otherized, and you are treated. It's very subtle, but it is even more deadly to us than any harm police and vigilantes could visit upon us. This is where, in part, this 200 excess deaths a day come in the U.S. It is that stress, that distress, because we're trying to figure out how to get accepted. We're trying to figure out what we can do to make them treat us better. That is not this. That doesn't work. That's why we have to protect ourselves from that harm. And it doesn't matter. We have to come to the place where it doesn't matter how we're mistreated, because it's our internalization of that mistreatment that is killing us. When we can respond differently in a relaxed, I know who I am, I know the truth. Your opinion of me is none of my business. Quincy Jones and Ray Charles said in the 40s when they were traveling that they decided when they were experiencing racism and segregation that not one drop of their self-worth depended on anyone's acceptance of them. I'm sure that's why they survived as long as they did. Other
Right.
Africans and African Americans and people, they've made these decisions. They've done the things that I talk about, and they've done it on their own. They know how to, and I mean, I look at my parents, they knew how to rise above it and not internalize it. They had a different sense of the world and themselves and their experiences that was very protective in comparison to us of the baby boomer and subsequent generations, where we want to believe that integration was going to change things. It didn't really change anything in terms of the consciousness, and that's why we're still dealing with what we're dealing with today. And while some of us may have improved financially, it's taken a great toll on us. I've seen it in my friends. I've seen it over and over again. And it was just the job is making me crazy. They're not treating me right. They're doing all kinds of things to sabotage, but it's very subtle, it's very insidious, it's very poisonous, because we don't think of it from the perspective of our divinity, of our empowered self. We think of it from the perspective of what can I do to make people like me, for me to be accepted, for me to be a team player.
Yes. Yes.
Let that go. It is poison. Dr. Clyde Winters, who I heard on Brother Shock, Reverend Philippe show, says he goes to work with a Caucasian mindset and comes home to a Black mindset, because that's how he can deal and compartmentalize with the discrimination and how he's treated. We have to protect ourselves. We do, because it's tragic. Racism, as in this form, it has, let me just put it to you like this. In the US, if the police were killing the numbers of Black people and vigilantes that insidious day-to-day workplace discrimination in particular and racism in general does, this country would be ungovernable. We would be marching every day. We would not tolerate it. But because it's so insidious and so hidden, we really don't consider it in its broader context and implications. We don't think about it because we think it's just us or just our friends, but it's pervasive. It happens to everyone.
That is why our inner spirituality, love, is everything.
Yes, yes. Love is protective. I'll give you an example. And I love to talk about this study because it wasn't designed to prove how love is healing, but it did. And it was conducted also at The Ohio State University. And this was back in the 1980s, and they were testing a cholesterol lowering drug. So there were rabbits, there were a group of rabbits who were given a very high cholesterol drug, a high cholesterol diet, and some were given the drug and some weren't. And when the animals were sacrificed to study the impact of the drug, there was a group of animals within this population that had no sign, they had very minimal signs of heart disease. And the scientists couldn't figure it out because it wasn't genetic, it wasn't environmental, because they were all fed the same thing. So they went into the lab to figure out what happened. what protected these rabbits from heart disease, developing it when they were supposed to with this high fat, high cholesterol diet? What they found is that at the time that the rabbits were fed, they were on several rungs of cages. The lab technician that fed them was short, so she would take out the animals on the lower rung and pet them as she fed them. She
Mm.
loved them. She loved them. And no scientists wanted, oops, excuse me, removing my computer. No scientists wanted to believe that love was protected. Of course, that couldn't be it. So they repeated the study. It was either 2 or 3 times, but every time they got the same results, that the animals were protected by merely petting and loving them. That's the power of love. And it takes an animal study to prove it to scientists who want to be objective and don't want to believe in the power of human emotions, but that showed it. It goes back to what I said about the babies and the chimpanzee babies. Love is a nurturing force and it heals us.
And that it's for free. That's even one of the best things. It's free.
It's the
Even
best things
just
in life
when
are
you
free. Yes. And love is the best gift. Absolutely.
what oh my goodness. Hey, no, we have to go through this. I cannot even skip any one of them, even though you've said it. It's just sweet. It's just there to hear it again. Explain why no, why do you believe da, da, da. Let me just go to number 9. Explain why you believe they are important aspects of healing racism, invisible wounds.
Well, I believe it's important. Well, we haven't healed it any other way. And it is the wounds, the internalized forms of racism, our experiences, our memories, our perception of ourselves in the midst of these experiences causes us harm by our because of how we perceive these experiences. We're constantly, continuously releasing stress hormones.
Mhm.
Stress is a normal process that needs to happen to prepare us to run or fight. But when we're constantly releasing stress hormones, in comparison to the acute release as the body was designed, we're weakening our bodies, we're weakening our immune system, making it more susceptible to developing diseases. We're creating more inflammation. Inflammation is a major pillar, a major foundation of all diseases, acute and chronic. And we're creating pathways in our brain that make us hypersensitive to these experiences. So it triggers us and it prevents us literally when we constantly experience distress. Sometimes we can call it trauma. It changes our brainwave patterns, and we literally can't access our higher intelligence, our executive functioning that would help us to come out of these situations. We're stuck in the emotional aspects of our brain and in the trauma, the memory of the trauma. So we can't get to the executive part, which some people call the God brain, that says, Dr. Susan, you can respond differently. It's okay. You don't have to think that. You don't have to, you can choose. You can do something else. You don't have to get afraid. You don't have to be upset. You're okay. And literally that's what happened to me. I mean, I've been practicing super healing and talking about it in holistic medicine my entire career. But it wasn't until, and I've been very healthy in general, but it wasn't until I was in the midst of a crisis, a professional situation where my health was in danger because it had been going on for 2 or 3 years and my job was at risk, that I realized, and it was a divine revelation in that moment, excuse me, you're stronger than this. You have the ancestors with you. Your parents are with you, and your divinity is coming forth. So forget that thought and go forth and speak the truth of who you are. And it shifted. I mean, it shifted me. It healed me internally in that moment. And I realized I was never distressed again in the midst of this situation. And it ultimately resolved itself. But before it did, I was totally different. Not today. I'm not the one. I'm good. I'm not upset. I know the truth. And yes, it didn't trigger me. I'm like, you're really silly. I'm talking about the people who were imposing it on me. My divinity's coming forth. I'm fine. I'm standing with my ancestors who survived a whole lot more than this.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I realized that what I had come to experience is something I needed to share with my people because they were suffering. That was the crisis and the opportunity, and that was the gift of this experience. I probably would have eventually come to the realization, but it was so intense, it gave me no leeway but to come to the realization of what I could do and how I could help my people overcome it. So it was really a gift and a blessing. Even though I didn't feel like it when it was happening, it really didn't. It was very painful initially. It was painful because of how I perceived it and how I interpreted the situation. But when I changed it, it was a piece of cake. As MC Hammer used to say, can't touch this. Can't touch it. No.
Hmm. Coming from you, a descendant of our enslaved, that's why I have so much respect. I mean, so much respect of our descendants because what you have experienced, no human mind can understand
Yeah.
that. We
Yeah.
might sweet talk racism or African Americans, the Caribbeans, the Haiti. But when I sit sometime and I just try to meditate, and that's why you talked about meditation is very essential.
Yes.
We have to go deep into us to just even understand, have the experience, feel the experience, what
Yes.
our ancestors, your
Yes.
descendant, I mean you people in the Americas went through. Of course, we had our own. We talk about colonization on the continent, but we were in the familiar. I never knew anything. And these things
Yeah.
I learned them when I was out here. I didn't see
Mhm.
anything. I didn't know anything. I was loved. I was cherished. I was in my environment. I went to the farms, to the water. I swam. I had everything that was just a precious gift of the Creator, right? The only thing
Yeah.
that I didn't have that they keep telling us was we were poor because we were in a village where there was no light, there was not this. But until somebody even told us, I knew we used to have a lamp and we went out with it. I didn't even know that we needed light until somebody said it. Right.
Yes.
So that is it. But exactly when I sit and I see that even us today, for real, any black person on particularly in the diaspora, even when you
Yes.
pretend in Europe, in the UK, we've seen those cases, particularly in Germany. Africans that
Yeah.
have acted like they are African Americans, they gain respect from
Yes.
Germans. The Germans even, they distinguish if you're African
Mm.
American, the treatment, the respect, the way they put, is different. But if you're continental Africa, a migrant, so why? Because I think even they themselves, that
They
respect
know.
that they
Yes.
have for our descendants, overcoming, being what they
Yes.
are today, it is unbeatable. And I think that's what we Africans, particularly us, should know. Maybe the fact that we also do not recognize, do not
Mm.
appreciate, do not feel the
Yes.
pain of our diaspora, do not get the empathy. Also, it doesn't give us the experience of being wise to know that we just not suffering, we're great. Am I correct?
Yes, I agree with you. The the West, the Western Hemisphere, especially the United States, but other parts as well. But there was something very unique about the experience in the United States because of its size and because of the laws that were created. And I agree with you. One of my friends said that we didn't respect appreciate our parents' experience. And I think that's true because, as I said, not only survival, but overcoming and thriving in the midst of these, you know, unfortunate human experiences. It was just their normal. And they didn't give themselves a lot of praise. They just did what they had to do to live and take care of their families. But it was remarkable. I'll just tell you one story about myself. My father's father, they lived in South Carolina. He told me his father used to walk 50 miles back and forth, 50 miles each way to his job on the weekends. 50 miles, that's a long way to walk. And it's not just wasn't just walking 50 miles. It was walking in 50 miles of danger because black men were lynched, black people were killed and harmed randomly. And many years ago, I was driving home, and it was 100-mile trip from my job at the time, and it was snowing, and it was dark, and I was starting to complain. And my father's voice came to me talking about his father, my grandfather, walking those 50 miles. I said, I'm going to shut up. I am in a car. I am warm, and I will get home eventually. What my grandfather had to deal with was so much more. And they were so, as I said, they had a different sensibility, but they were just beautifully triumphant people in
Mm-hmm.
very dehumanizing conditions. And I want to share this. This is a really good example. I heard Lionel Richie from the Commodores, one of my favorite singers, talking, I believe it was on Oprah a few years ago, and he was talking about his father. And he grew up in Alabama, which was a very racist place. And his father, Lionel was out with his dad shopping, and he made the mistake of drinking from a white water fountain outside. And these white guys saw him do this, and they started talking very terribly and calling his father names for allowing Lionel, who was a little boy at the time, maybe he was 7 or 8, he was very young, and he saw how these men were totally disrespecting and dehumanizing his father. And he said to his father, Daddy, why didn't you speak up for yourself? Why didn't you say something back to them? And he says, Son, today I decided to live and be your father rather than to die and be a man.
Oh God.
That's what I know. That changed so much in me, just recognizing, because sometimes we want to say, well, why didn't you do this? Those circumstances were real. Death was possibility for just standing up for your innate human right as a being to speak the truth and not to be mistreated. But that's what his father said. Change the way I looked at my ancestors. And that's the truth. Because we often wonder, well, why didn't you do something more? They couldn't have. They could have been killed. So they decided to live in those circumstances and take care of their families rather than to stand up and to challenge that inhumanity, because they knew it was more important for them to remain alive, to take care of their
Mm,
children.
mm,
It
mm,
changed everything for me because I
mm.
lived in the South and I saw it, and I was very vocal because I was from the North, but I would say, well, why don't you all speak up? But that's why, because the penalty for speaking as a human being, think about that, was death. Or just a random act of being in the wrong place at the wrong time was death. That's what they lived through. They're miracle people. The fact that they could wake up in the morning and get out of their bed and not sink into psychosis, not sink into depression, not sink into anything that understandably was a normal human reaction, speaks to their triumphant spirit. That spirit, that divinity came through and gave them the energy, gave them the ability to continue on. That I know to be true.
Wow. Yes. Empathy actually
Yes.
gives us the opportunity probably to be in touch with the truth. If we
Yes.
feel the pain and go deeper, it brings, I think, because now when we talk
Yes.
about love, it's more of like theory. But when we look at the tools of how do I achieve this, I hear
Yes.
it, I know I'm supposed to love, but I don't get it, I don't know how to. And I think that would be our next conversation, even the post-traumatic
Okay.
and the other questions for it, Dr. Elaine, because I don't want to finish the question because I want to I don't want to, I don't want to think that we will not have you here again. Um,
Oh, I'm happy to return. It's my honor, my pleasure, and privilege to come back whenever you want me. Just call, pick up the phone and
already.
call or email me.
No, no,
Yes,
no, wait,
yes.
wait, 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 wait. I
Oh,
already
it's
was
my
wanting to
honor.
say, is it okay to say we can reach out to you when we, and you're just saying yes?
Yes, yes. This is my work. This is my purpose. Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you so very much. We're going to keep in touch with you. We're going to make it a part of this because I think you make our work on the Pan African Daily more easier. I think
Mhm.
we've just taken 50% of what we're supposed to do. So if we are in some kind of affiliate and partnership, just like we with the others, RefShock, I think it really divides the work. Uh, then I can listen. I can also learn, and I also can tap some love for myself and that
Yes.
just give. So I truly appreciate and I'm thankful for that. And we will reach out to you. So I'm just like, what is the last word that just give us a takeaway that we need
Mm.
to just be
Mm.
dreaming or meditating on until we meet you again very soon?
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you again. I'm just so overwhelmed and so grateful for this opportunity and the sharing together because it was really a soul meeting, a soul to soul for all of us, and connection, which is so beautiful and so meaningful and enduring. This is just the first chapter of our walk together. I would say to you and to everyone who's listening, I love you. I hold you in my heart with love. I pray and hope and wish that you will grow in your awareness of the truth of who you are and in your health, and create the space to allow the newness and the transformation that is so needed for yourself and for this earth right now. For such a time as this, we are here. So take care of yourself. Listen. The most important thing is just to listen to your inner voice. I am not the authority. I'm just here to remind you the truth of who you are. Listen and allow your voice to speak through you. It will guide you, it will protect you, it will heal you. That's the most important thing I can share with you. So thank you, my sister. It's been, I don't want to go. I feel like the little kids, no, I don't want to leave. I don't. But I know we have to end. But I will just say until we meet again, and we will.
No, we should meet next week.
We can
I
do
can,
that.
I can, because I want us to talk about this empathy, because I
Yes.
think that healing process starts from that, be it from
Yes.
the continent, be it in the diaspora. People
Yes.
on the continent, and we want to start doing. I know you have a 40-day action plan. I haven't even touched base on it. I know you have a super healing program, webinars,
Yes.
and this. Please, Doctor Healing, Doctor Liberator, Doctor whatever. We have to start on a holistic. You're just telling us that
Yes.
you
Yes.
brought it, you have broken it in the beginning of a new phase, which is October. There is no waste of time. We don't have time. Our people are dying. They need this love, they need this liberation. And I cannot wait to not have you next week or in the next 2 weeks. So Nisha is going to reach out to you, and we would breach this contact, never to break it anymore. We are sending you love. I mean, if there's anything that you brought and gave us,
Mm.
I'm also calling of on my ancestors, those on the continent, those that have passed away, those in the diaspora and everywhere, that anything that you've given us today and that might have taken a part of you, that they replenish it again, that they feel everything and give you more, so that when you come here, you give us that healing. We need it so badly, and they know that we need it. So I want to thank you so very much. I want to thank Rev Shog. Rev Shog, you're watching us right now. I don't know how to appreciate you. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to just say you're the king, like you said, I'm the goddess. So we thank you so very much for every bridge, for any one of us that is bridging here, whether you're the visitors or you're the in the chat room or you are watching and listening for the first time. Please make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you're going to share this video intensively. Make sure we're going to repeat this conversation, because for me, this is the break. This is the break that we've been hanging around and waiting for. So thank you so very much, Queen. And we bless you
Oh,
so much.
oh, my pleasure, my sister, my goddess. Thank you for who you
Thank
are.
Thank you.
Much
And thank
love
you
to
for
you.
everyone that
Yes.
has been watching. I know a lot of people like, you don't take questions today. Please, let's just first of all digest it. We will start asking questions. And our next session with her will really be, how do we connect this empathy? How do I feel your pain? How do I feel the pain of our ancestors, of our past? How do we feel? How do we should we look for whips again and whip ourselves to feel the pain that our ancestors went through in those sugarcane farms? Should we look for the ocean and maybe jump deep and see whether we would survive? Should we chain ourselves, stand in the marketplace? How do we get the empathy? We kind of lost touch with it because we are not connected. We want to feel back the pain of one another so that we can heal. and we can be a love. So I want to thank you for being our guest tonight with Dr. And we say good night. We're going to see us tomorrow. We'll be live, and maybe Monday. Just watch out for the program. Thank you so very much. We love you. Bye-bye. You are watching the Pan African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.